Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the ARC Advisory Group Smart Cities Podcast. I'm Eddie Fiedler. I'm a transport analyst here at ARC, and so I'm thrilled to be joined today by Richard Albrecht, founder and CEO of Saascharge. Richard, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, Edward. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're pleased to have you. So Richard, can we maybe start by having you tell us just a little bit about your professional background?
Of course. I initially come from the telecommunications, where I worked for several years in Europe as a product developer and product manager in transactional services, so voice services. In 2012, I moved in the energy sector. And one of my first tasks was to develop a solutions for utilities to move into the electric vehicle charging world. So we have to imagine there was exactly the arrival of the Tesla S and the beginning of what I would call the credibility of this industry. Pretty challenging. We were into a niche product. We still are into a situation of a niche product, but the idea was to create a national network of EV charging stations in Switzerland, where I'm coming from, with the challenge of utilities having a limited territory. They have resources. They're also limited, especially in such a niche product. So the idea basically was to share resources among different utilities and smaller cooperatives in order to build up a national network. That has had some success, and I decided to do some consulting in the EV charging world, always on the side of all the software platforms. So basically, every backend or so-called back office managing EV charging stations. That brought me to do some consulting in major markets like the Netherlands or Germany. And 2018, I worked with a company in the microgrid field in North Carolina, and that decided me to develop a company here in the US. I thought there were a gap in terms of services, that there are multiple market players which would be willing to enter the market, but they do not have the right tools and services. So I developed Saascharge, and here I am today.
Great. I see. So a pretty natural progression there. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about Saascharge specifically?
Yes, Saascharge is a software platform enabling anyone to create and operate a public electric vehicle charging network that can be connected to any drivers. What it means, the situation today is that while you're traveling with an electric vehicle, there are not many EV charging stations around. Anyone today is expecting some grants, or we can have some subsidies coming from VW settlements to cover this gap. As a result, we see some fast charger popping up. But our approach is slightly different. We want to enable more market players to develop services. There are around 650,000 restaurants in the US. And our objective is to provide a software cloud-based platform solution. It's basically a tool set with a backend to create and operate an EV charging network based on open protocol, with the objective so that you can buy any kind of different infrastructure, a solution to interconnect your local network to the rest of the US, and a white label set of applications for EV drivers. In other words, the possibility for you to develop your own offering for your consumers. Our business model is based on licenses and commission transactions. We are a B2B company, so we are not a service provider. We provide purely solution, which enable us to be extremely competitive from a pricing point of view. The target clients we have are all electrical installation companies, utilities, and the whole automotive sectors. So we're talking here about OEMs, but also fleet management companies, rental companies, which basically are looking for a solution to get access to the EV charging network. We started in end of 2018, and now we have a fully functional solutions where we've just connected our first clients just recently.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. So just to drill down a little deeper into it, if I run a Hilton hotel or a restaurant or something, and I want to attract more clientele, I might set up an EV charging system. But you're saying maybe using a solution like yours, I can connect with a broader charging network as well.
That's absolutely correct. If you're a restaurant or hotel today, you have possibilities to buy charging stations and simply basically mandate an electrician for the installation and connect this charging station on our platform, and we give the access to any other service providers with our e-rooming hub, basically. That's absolutely correct.
Okay, so drivers who are part of a network that's part of the hub, that's a party to that roaming hub, could also access and drive revenue to me through my charging station at my hotel.
Absolutely. The objective is really to drive more traffic to your site, which is good for the restaurant or the hotel. They're going to have more clientele. They're going to be able to geolocalize that there is a charging station at this site. So first off, it's a reason to stop. And then, as you know, charging an electric vehicle takes 10 minutes to several hours, depending on the type of chargers and your car, of course. So you can be busy while your car is charging. And for the site, it means more consumption on sites. That's why we really believe that restaurant chains along the highway are going to be the future gas station that as we know them today.
That's a really good point. Yeah, that's a pretty standard criticism of people who are anti EVs, that you're driving on the highway and now you have to wait for 30 minutes, 20 or 40 minutes or something like that. But that's only because you're used to looking at it from the perspective of a fossil car. Maybe if you're taking a long highway trip, you actually kind of want to stop and sit and have a cup of coffee for 25 minutes. That's probably healthier. Maybe you can stretch out and not have so much road rage later, So it's a very different perspective too, but the business model is changing.
Well, absolutely. That's absolutely correct what you're saying. And it's very interesting because it's a matter of perception we have today of these cars, because if we take the first Nissan Leaf, for example, we could barely drive 150 miles. Today, the cars that we see coming on the market, Tesla Model 3 or the announcement of the new Mach-3, the Ford Mustang, we're all talking about 250, 300 miles,
right?
Which it's a very healthy way to travel. Every 150, 200 miles, which translate into 2 hours or 3 hours of driving, a break would be absolutely normal.
Right. I don't know about you, Richard, but when I drive for 2.5 or 3 hours, I want to stop for more than 4 minutes. You know what I mean? But when you have detractors to a certain industry, they're going to find a way. And in general, people are sometimes hesitant to change the way things are done for a long time, and that's also understandable. But I think it's going to go this way. That's for sure. So I wanted to drill down on something else you said about the OEMs. So you're saying in this case, if Volvo is rolling out their line of light-duty EVs, they could work through a platform like yours to enable their drivers to have access to an entire network or multiple networks of EV chargers.
Correct. The model we've seen on the market, let's start with Tesla, for example, which had a proprietary network for their own cars. This model is not realistic. What we see, not everyone can build up his own network. And I have to say a lot of respect for Tesla. They were so early on in the market, they couldn't wait for service providers to develop a network all over the world. So, but if Volvo or any other major car makers wants to start today, what they want, as correctly said, is to get access to a maximum of charging points. Not only one network, but several networks. I would go a little further than that. So on our platform, we enable them to take a role that we call e-mobility providers. So basically providing access to their drivers to the network. That's what we do with our platform. We give them the possibility to access other networks, not only access the network, and also to negotiate attractive pricing with these networks. And we see OEM becoming the major e-mobility providers in the future because of the technology plug and charge. Plug and charge is a capability to, as it says, plug the car on a charging stations, and we will recognize the driver from the car directly thanks to his vehicle identification number. So instead of using a smartphone application to start the charging transaction or an RFID card, we will simply plug the car in the charger, unplug the chargers, and leave, and at the end of the month you will get an invoice for charging transactions you've done in the same way that you're using your mobile phone when you're doing calls today. And this will completely change the market. Car makers have clients at the source. They sell their cars, they sell the access to a network. And this is already happening in Europe with Charge Now, the offering from BMW. You subscribe to Charge Now, you get access to all the networks in Europe. And we'll see this coming as well in the US with Electrify America, the network, which has been basically created for this model.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you see those apps of this moment as sort of like a middleman that has a place right now, but as we move towards interoperability between charging systems, they're not going to be so relevant anymore.
Absolutely, but that's at the benefit of everyone. If today I'm chief of McDonald's or Burger King, for example, I would be very interested to install charging stations at all my locations, and afterwards call the GM of Ford and propose him a better deal for his drivers to stop by and charge their car. And this will create a very positive dynamic on the market, where also suddenly you have possibilities to drag a clientele of EV drivers to your locations. So we see a high interest from cities, parkings, retailer to install charging stations, because they get access to a new clientele.
Right, right. No, this is a great vision for how EV driving and charging is hopefully going to evolve. So then I'm curious, Richard, in your view, if that's where you see things going, what's stopping us from getting there right now? What are some of the barriers in the marketplace, or technological or otherwise?
Well, I mean, first off, we need to see a mass production of these cars to get into that vision. It's very hard for the moment to justify to install fast chargers in all fast foods in the US. Not now, but very soon. And one of the aspects we have to see is the base product, the car. Thankfully, we see all the major car makers all over the world investing heavily into this technology. Some more than others. Some are more skeptical than others. We can see that in the US with Ford, GM, which are driving different strategies. We see that with Nissan and Toyota in Japan. We see that in Europe, Fiat Chrysler, or the German car makers, which are moving heavily in this technology. And but to get to this level, the cars needs to be cheaper, and this is going to happen with cheaper batteries. The cars needs to be able to drive larger distances. This is, we're talking before 300 miles barrier. We need to have all the cars getting there, and they're getting there. It's just a matter in 2-3 years, 90% of EVs in the market will pass the bar of the 300 miles. The standard that Tesla has brought on the market will be the new standard, in my point of view, and this will ensure that success. And the pricing will go down with more mass productions, cheaper batteries. Of course, there are some concern about the problem of sourcing in terms of energy volumes. For me, I'm rather optimistic. We've seen some statistics in some areas where if we would change from 1% to 100% of EVs, we would require only 15 to 20% more energy. And considering that most of the people buying EVs will probably also install some solar panels and home batteries, we could cover that gap. The challenge would rather be in terms of energy management. We have to manage all the peak demands of energy, but thankfully there are plenty of solutions to either motivate the driver to charge at when there is sufficient capacity on the network, or basically a smarter way to consume. So I'm rather positive on that. The biggest challenge to get to this very competitive markets with more players investing, we need first off to cover to open the markets. Too many networks are currently based on a proprietary type of way, which means that if you sign a contract with this company, it's going to be very hard to move your charging stations to another company. There is this standard OCPP gaining a lot of tractions in the US, which enables basically any clients in the future to buy a charging station and to move from one service providers to another. We need to have more competitive business models. For the moment, if you are a site host, a restaurant or hotel, the service cost you will pay for your charging station will be way too high. This cost needs to be lowered down. And there are different ways to see it. We need more market players to enter. There's around 500 utilities in the US which would have the shoulder and a sufficient size to become a service provider, so not reselling charging services, but basically being a service provider where you can order a charging station, you can subscribe your charging stations, and you can, as an EV driver, use the access to access all charging stations in their area or another area. And for this, you need interconnected networks. What is today possible with a debit card? I can withdraw money here in the US, in Europe, in China, but I cannot drive from New York to Boston without having multiple subscriptions to multiple networks, and this is not possible. Thankfully, we see very positive sign coming from California, where they force networks to interconnect each other, and this is a very positive move. But it should be a normality that networks are connected together, and this is slowly happening in the US. But anyone should be able to propose EV charging station services. Anyone should be able to get access to all the charging stations. This is at the benefit of all service providers. And this will bring more competition on the market. I say that because it's the case, for example, in Europe, where there is around 100 networks. And it's possible from Finland to Portugal to drive with only one subscription service and to charge at plenty of smaller networks. And this is for me a very positive development, and it shouldn't be a matter of experts to be able to provide EV charging services.
Yeah, that absolutely has to be where it goes, especially for the sake of public perception at the ease of, or at the viability of driving an EV. Even though there's a very interesting quirk here that most EV drivers we know, well, first off, most drivers, even here in the US, only drive a few dozen miles per day. And the vast majority of charging for EV drivers happens at home. It's really a top-off of your battery. It's not a full 60 kilowatt hour charge every night. It's maybe 5 or 10 or not even. So the aspect here of, long distance highway driving is really maybe 3-4% of your total miles, something like that. And yet that is the main perception barrier to mass electrification. That is such a funny quirk, but once you're able to access the assets of all these different networks seamlessly, like you said, with a debit card or whatever it is, that's going to change. So in your view, if that is the goal, just to summarize, there's no technological barrier to full interoperability here in the US. It's pretty much happening in Europe already.
Well, I'd say the solution do exist. Now it's more than a perception, is also from a regulatory standpoint. I said before, California were forcing networks to go together, but there's another way. We don't need to force, but I would strongly encourage every government giving grants or subsidies for charging stations to be very clear to the service provider that he has to open his network. And you can definitely influence. I don't see why a city should accept to have charging stations at the benefit of one service provider. And so you can definitely influence this. There is, as you say, there is no technological barrier. There are open protocol existing, OCPI, which is starting to be adopted here in the US as well. But there's more a willingness to go in this direction. And when we were talking about the utilities and being a market actor as well, they've been slowed down by other service provider trying to slow them down. So there is really a battle to let enter more players on the market. But the positive is the EV charging market, or let's say the transformation, the migration of gasoline to electric vehicles start to be an obvious fact. That's why we've seen a lot of market players all suddenly moving into the EV world. And there's not many barrier to entrance. I can today order a charging station to ABB or Siemens or Bosch or different service providers, Eversec, and call a service provider and have my charging station running. This is not. We cannot compare the difficulty to entrance with, for example, a mobile phone, a service provider cannot start to install antenna in New York and develop a mobile phone service provider. But I can today, tomorrow, if I have a couple of millions to invest, develop my own charging network. Nobody can stop me. And that's a very big shift where all these gasoline companies are going to have to move in a direction. We have so many retailers. We have a Costco, for example, which have a gas card for their clients. There's no reason why they should have an EV card in the future. But in order to get this player engaged in this market, we have to let them become market actors instead of just being a reseller of a service or partner of a national network.
Right, and an actor to expand that network as well. It's a two-way street. If you
Sorry?
Yeah, there's almost a bit of a game theory aspect here too, where some of the different players don't want to be interoperable and play nice with each other because some of their potential business is going to go to some of their competitors. But on the other hand, a driver that may have gone to your competitor, if your station is closer to them, now that you're interoperable, they might go to you too. So it's not really a loss to play nice together and to work with interoperability.
Well, absolutely. It's an obvious fact. I mean, if today we would have around the table, and I hope they're going to be around the table soon, all the major fast food chain CEO, and we would ask them, how do you see the future of cars stopping by at the restaurant? Would you like to partner with one network and be limited to this network, or register to one network which gives you access to all the EV drivers in the country? And it's an obvious question. I mean, because today, if someone would stop and go to Starbucks or whoever, there can be any driver, not the driver of one subscription company. That would be like if only T-Mobile clients could have access to internet at one specific location. That wouldn't make any sense at all. So the market will develop itself in a direction where the owner of these parking sites where people will stop while traveling will automatically require to have access to a maximum of EV drivers, because the consequences go further than that. If you mentioned the example of Volvo, all these cars have infotainment system inside. And this system will give them where the charge points are geographically. So automatically while they're driving, they will say, oh, I have 60 miles left. let's stop, let's go out at the next rest station, let's charge a car, and let's enjoy a meal of some sort. And if you have kids, the kids might want to start to this location or this location, and automatically, if you can only charge at this specific location, that would be a problem. And this is, we don't see this as being realistic to have closed networks. We see networks being open for that simple reason. And this is at the benefit from everyone, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That seems to be where we need to go. So I guess just to wrap things up, what do you see in the cards for Saascharge? Where do you want to go as a company, and how do you guys fit into this broadening and movement to interoperability in the charging space?
We believe in this future of full interconnection. So Saascharge positions itself as an enabler. If tomorrow a utility, regardless of the size of the utility, or a city wants to install a couple of charging stations, we provide them a system to operate the network, and we provide them application to provide access to their drivers and to generate their own revenue. So we enable them to be on the map, to operate a service. On the same way that if you're a company today, you're not going to outsource your financial department. You're just going to buy an accounting system. You're going to buy licenses to Oracle, SAP, or Sage to be able to do your accounting. And that's the same situation with Saascharge. We provide them application to enable them to build up the network with their chosen infrastructure. If you're a city, parking, for example, you're not going to buy fast chargers. You're going to buy AC chargers, but you're going to insist on the numbers of chargers. So you're completely free. We provide the system for them to operate them. And it's basically a tool set, but it's also a marketplace. So once they use our application, we put them on the map. We enable them to build up the business model, to get access to the charging revenues that we estimate around $500 to $1,000 per drivers. And we enable them to be available for any other networks in the US. So technically the objective is that once you use our system to develop your own network, you can be accessed by any EV drivers in North America. That's the objective.
Well, that is a lofty and an awesome goal, Richard. We hope you get there. Well, hey, this has been a great conversation. I think our listeners would have really enjoyed this. So, Richard, we appreciate you joining us, representing Saascharge this morning. So yeah, we hope to have you back, and we'll be closely in touch, and we're going to see how you guys do.
Thanks a lot, Edward. I'm looking forward to the next steps.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, Richard. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Take care.